did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
World Jam Global Radio. This is clarity.
I want to say good evening to each and every single one of you tonight.
Already did my time.
This is Kervin, Julien on Issues Today, coming to you live on World Jam Global Radio.
Time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
This week's show, no different than any other, except
back in the day, I didn't really care about the system. It was all about survival.
Alongside me today, as ever, I have Dr. David Remay, my right hand, riding shotgun, my sidekick,
and I couldn't be
troubleshooter.
With my hands and very
don't mess with him.
I was swift,
and he's on fire.
Girls all over the street. I was getting money. Life was so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged. I'm a changed man. Don't need no gun in my hand. It ain't about.
Today we're looking at part 2 of the show that we started last week. Looking at journalism and activism coming together and the changes that it makes, the difference that it makes, the impact it creates, and the necessity
for my crime.
To see truth and justice come to light. Bringing that together, in today's show we have, once again from Albuquerque, activist, journalist, researcher,
I was a drug dealer, sold more drugs than super.
Andy Christopherson from Burke Media.
I'm not proud of what I had to do. That's why I'm telling my.
We also have journalist
I had to repent
and author.
I was doing all kind of stupid shit.
Of the Cardiff 5 or the Cardiff 3.
Since I've gotten
the Fitted In Project.
I wouldn't do it again.
Sati Seika.
My brain was so numb. I was a real Forrest Gump, but I was nobody's chump. Me and Billy the Kid had a lot of.
And we also have a criminal justice reform advocate from Virginia, United States of America.
Real alligator.
Annette E. Blankenship.
The opening statements are going on right now.
Representing
Live.
Team Den Mother, we have Team Den Mom. Den Mom to her friends.
Already did my time.
Giving us a roundup.
Crime. Already did my time.
World Jam Global Radio.
As a DJ, we call that a rewind, reload, start again. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say a big good evening and a big welcome to my very good friend, Dr. David Remay. Come on in, David.
Hello, Kervin. How are you doing in Britain today?
I'll tell you what, we've been given the warnings that there's going to be blizzards, there's going to be high winds, there's going to be cold weather, and they've told us to batten down the hatches, put on essential heating, and get ourselves warm.
Well, it's beautiful here in Connecticut, and I hope you have some of our sunshine over there on that beautiful little island that at one time ruled 3/4 of the world and left at least 1/8 of it. Okay, now let me talk about what's happening in America today. Hillary Clinton's emails have become the object of lust, desire, passion, and salivating at the mouth by the rabid Republican fiends who are not concerned at all about the 2.5 million George W. Bush, Karl Rove, Condi Rice, George Tenet, and Dickie Pooh Cheney's emails. But they're very concerned about 18 that mention the name of the president. And from what I gather from Mrs. Feinstein, the noble senator of California, is that they concern things that were already published in the New York Times, like how to make an apple pie for your daughter's birthday. But the Republicans are very concerned. The nation is collapsing. The secrets of the world are out. And none of us can go outside of our door without immense fear of Little Red Riding Hood being consumed by some great reptilian creature crawling out of the GOP swamp. Now, the next thing they're doing is comparing Mrs. Clinton's emails to those of the General David Petraeus. Now, let me remind you, Petraeus was the superstar, beloved man of the Republicans. He was like a naked idol in the temple of Zeus, for whom they all shown nothing but glory, gratitude, wealth, and prestige. The man gave himself a Bronze Star with a V. A V in the military means valor, and he gave it to himself as a group award. Everybody in the Army, including me, and I wasn't the greatest in the world, but I wasn't the worst, knows that a Bronze Star is given with a V for individual valor. Now, tell me when a major general is on the ground with IEDs and people shooting at him like the soldiers who are nothing but fallow for those men who give orders to award himself a Bronze Star. He's a disgusting creep. And then on top of it, he's a married man, and adultery is a criminal act in the military judicial process. The Uniform Code of Military Justice, Manual for Courts Martial, calls for a courts martial for adultery and high-level officers. He put himself up with this big-boobed woman. He gave her secrets. He sent her emails. He gave her contacts of our most secret agents. He gave her secret tactical and strategic information, and he should have been tried for a felony. But because his friends came together, they whitewashed it, they gave him a misdemeanor, and now the Pentagon, under the president's advice, was going to give this former 4-star general and CIA director a 3-star demotion. But what did they do? They come out today and say, no further punishment for General Petraeus. And the Republicans are celebrating like noxious gases filled with LSD has invaded their brains because they're dancing around like crazy people against Mrs. Clinton. Now let's talk about the Republican debate. It is a disgusting thing. All these master debaters were up there, and Jeb Cruz looked like the Pillsbury Doughboy, happy that Donald Trump wasn't there to stick him in the belly and burst his flour all over the place. Ted Cruz was looking like some kind of a preacher who had been exiled from Cuba, landed in Canada, and wound up in a cow pile in Texas. And then Marco Rubio, Motor Mouth Marco, also a Cuban, who is against immigration. Now, isn't that the best thing in the world? It's like a dog being against dogs, a cat being against meows, and a snake against crawling. And Marco Rubio, Motor Mouth Marco, speaks so fast his tongue twists around his neck and he's out of water before you know it. Then Ben Carson. Ben Carson floats like an Arab carpet flying from Jerusalem to Mecca with a gallon of whiskey. And then Rand Paul. He's the only one who makes any sense, but unfortunately he's from Kentucky, and that's 3 strikes against him because that's where Miss Kim Davis is from. Now you know Donald Trump. He wasn't at the debate, but somehow that empty podium had a ghost of winters past. He was like the Scrooge himself. There he was, paying revenge to all those birthers and Tea Party people who questioned President Barack Obama's birth and his right to be the president of the United States. And what happens? Trump dumps a load of seagull poop right on the head of the Canadian-born Cruz, and he stopped his cruising, and he stopped in his tracks, and he's gurgling baby food. Now, Iowa, what is Iowa? Iowa is a state that produces hogs, which I can't eat because I'm Jewish, and corn. And I can't eat the corn because they use the corn to make gasoline. They call it ethanol. And we don't even need the bloody ethanol. And it's running the price of food up because you can't feed the chickens ethanol. You can't feed the cows ethanol. You can't feed the piglets ethanol. You got to feed them corn. But they're feeding corn to the gas tanks. And let me tell you something. Have no doubt, my friends listening in Great Britain, Europe, and America. If Idaho, which you don't even know where Idaho is, but if Idaho, a state of the United States, if it was the first caucus state, we would be making gasoline out of potatoes. Now, let me tell you something else. this Donald Trump, this creepy man, and the Republicans, what do they talk about? Immigration. They talk about Mexicans, Muslims, black people, guns. They talk about everything that is disgusting. But one thing you won't hear them talk about is the economy of the United States or the price of oil. You know why? Because President Obama repaired it, and they can't wait to get back in and ruin it again. Now on the Democrat side, you've got this man called Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders. He feel the burn, feel the burn. That's what everyone says, feel the burn. Well, get the aloe plant and put it on your body and get rid of the burn. Because Bernie Sanders is a nice man. But he's got pictures of himself with the Soviet Union's flag in his office when Russia was America's biggest enemy in the world and pointing about 20 million nuclear bombs at us. And the American people are not going to vote for a communist-loving Sanders, even though I like him. I like his ideas, but he doesn't know how he's going to pay these programs. He hasn't pointed it out. And let me tell you what's going to happen. The Democrats in America have a choice. They can have idealism. Idealism is George McGovern, Walter Mondale, and Dukakis, or Dukakis as they call him. Now, McGovern, Mondale, Dukakis, they all lost the election, and they were idealists. Clinton and Obama were not idealists. They're pragmatists, and they won. Now, we can have Hillary, John Kerry, or we can have somebody like Sanders. And if we get Sanders, we're going to back up on civil rights, black rights, immigration rights, gay rights, marriage rights, all the things that we have fought so hard to get. Now, let me say this. If Hillary's emails get wrapped around her tuchus and she can't run for office, then we have to draft John Kerry. He's a billionaire. He's a multi-billionaire. He's got experience. He's overcome the SWIFT vote. He scares the poo-poo out of Israel. He will stand up for America and be for America, and he might even get a Nobel Prize for his brilliant solving of the Iranian crisis without shooting one single weapon. Now, let me say one more thing before I finish. I love Israel. We all love Israel. But I love Palestine, and we all should love Palestine. And whenever some people relegate other people and make them Untermensch, call them terrorists, call them migrants, call them Dreck, call them Schwarze, whenever they call people Japs, or Chinks, or Krauts, or Blindy Jerrys, this is a wrong thing, and we have to correct it. It is never allowed to diminish the life of any on earth. And people ask me frequently, they ask me, when will racism end in America, David? And I always give them the same answer. Racism will end in America when we look at another human being and say, there I see something in God's image made. And that something is sacred and holy and worthy of dignity. On that day, and only on that day will racism end. And that's the way it is from America today.
Well, David, thank you very much. And you know something? We don't normally disagree, because I normally agree with everything that you say. But I got to tell you, David, I can't agree on Hillary. I got to tell you something, mate. I feel the burn. I feel the burn. And I'm feeling the burn too. But again, what a fantastic roundup from my co-host riding shotgun alongside me, Dr. David Ramey. And it's time to hand over to...
Well, let me say this.
Go on, David.
You bring your hiney over here and I'll put a Band-Aid on you. Because I love Bernie, but I love victory more.
You know something? Sometimes the reason why we don't win is because we're too afraid to do the right thing. And so therefore we settle for our comfort zone, which gets another moron in control.
Well, I don't want Hillary. I want John Kerry. Joe Biden.
I'd
like to have either one of them.
I actually don't have a say because I don't live over there. But if I lived over there, I'd be feeling the burn and I'd be voting for the burn, I think. The biggest humanitarian out of them all, from where I'm going. Anyway, Let's move on very swiftly before me and you start having to pull out our swords and go and do a duel or something.
First of all, Kervin, I want to point this out for our guests and all the world. I shall never, ever do anything but give you two demerits for this, because I would never compare my sword to your sword.
Okay.
Oh, dear.
Well, there we go. On that note, let us hand over very quickly to Dean Mum, who is going to come in and give us a roundup of the news of issues today.
Thank you very much, Kervin. I'm just not...
Hello, Mom.
Hello, David.
I'm
Doing
glad
very
you're
well.
aboard.
Thank you.
Did you get over your flu?
Oh, yes. We're all much better here at the Den.
Oh, good.
So, and thank you as well for your wonderful, as always, news of the week. It's not only very informative, but very entertaining. It's very, very hard to follow, let me just say. But now we bring you live from Den Mother HQ our weekly special reports. Following on the heels of last week's exploration of homelessness and human dignity, we have several stories from across the United States illustrating the difficulties facing the unsheltered and disenfranchised here in our country. And as always, please follow our hashtag Issues Today and also our new Twitter account at Issues Today Show for tweets on the full articles of these topics. So in the understatement of the week, the Flint, Michigan water crisis continues to be a topic of great concern, and actually is now bringing to light in other cities, including several in Ohio, places that are suffering from very similar water toxicity. It should be noted that the lead levels are in many Flint homes at a level that by the EPA standards qualifies the water as literal toxic waste, and that is simply revolting in every sense of the word. The abuse of residents through their water system and lack of ownership over it is deeply analogous to these police abuses and other systemic crises that we hold so dear as topics on Issues Today. The residents that are there, they're affected disproportionately as people of color, and they have as a consequence suffered further by lack of media coverage of their situation or access to the proper channels to address it. In fact, additionally, homeowners that are facing this really life-threatening issue who might wish to move elsewhere for the safety of their families and children have been in some cases forced to remain, as it is illegal to sell property with a known lead or copper issue. In addition, many families are now at risk or already losing their children to Child Protective Services and similar agencies due to their inability to provide a safe living environment based on this toxic water, which is in no way their fault as parents. And as on a personal note, I just have to say we are the Den Mums, and as mums of some form or another, that just brings us to tears. It really does. Additionally, on the matters of homelessness, in Seattle, Washington, an active shooter situation caused the death of 2 residents of the homeless encampment, commonly known as the Jungle, and another 3 individuals were hospitalized with critical injuries caused by the shooting. As of this broadcast, the subject of the shooting is still unidentified and sought by local authorities. Seattle Mayor Ed Murray had intended to address the widespread homelessness and lack of oversight and access to better resources in his city prior to this incident, and was quoted following it as saying, "I can't help but wonder, did I act too late? It's on me in the end." It's worth noting that cities such as Seattle and Portland, Oregon are often havens for the unsheltered during the winter months in the U.S. due to their comparatively temperate climates. And the Seattle mayor added to his statement that our region, quote, "Our region is third in the nation behind only New York and Los Angeles in providing 8,300 homes for people who were homeless, but this is not enough and we will do more." This is a critical human rights issue, and we at Issues Today hope he is sincere in that goal. A headcount on just one night last year approximated 10,000 homeless individuals within Seattle city limits and the surrounding county. And one may note that not every homeless individual can be found on a one-night headcount, so that's probably a grave underestimation. For those not wishing to do the math, even that number is well in excess of the total number of beds and services currently available to homeless citizens in the Seattle region. And finally, in New Jersey, a homeless man was offered $5 whole by a man in exchange for filming him dumping a cup of boiling hot coffee over his head not once but twice. Mr. Ronald Legatt, age 65, had been sleeping in the dugout of a local ball field, and the man who requested this appalling service claimed that it was okay because there are apparently many videos of this sort of humiliation of the homeless on YouTube and other platforms. Legatt himself was quoted as saying, "I didn't know it was going on Facebook at all. I don't even know what Facebook is, to be honest with you." His embarrassment at being reduced to such a choice by his fellow human beings, particularly at his age, was very palpable in the interview following intervention by a Good Samaritan who spoke up for his case after witnessing the incident. And with regard to that Good Samaritan, his name is Carlos Mejia. We applaud his behavior for speaking up for Mr. Legat and encourage all citizens to follow in those excellent footsteps if they should witness mistreatment of any individual in this sort of way or any other. And additionally, I might add that for those people who might be considering such undignified and cruel treatment of their fellow human beings, might we recommend in future simply giving such a man the hot cup of coffee? It is, after all, winter, freezing cold out, and particularly true following the storms on the eastern seaboard over the past weeks, which Mr. Legat and others must undoubtedly have lived through out of doors. In news of police misconduct and citizen journalism, which is the topic of today's program, we have a couple of other important updates to share with you, though we are running short on time for special reports. So please follow our Twitter, Issues Today Show, for articles on the following issues and others from the past week. Maryland Police Lieutenant Victor Gearhart, a 33-year veteran of the Baltimore City Police Force, was called out publicly by the FOP and police commissioner for racist and hateful verbal abuses perpetrated through his personal Twitter account. Jason Flannery, a St. Louis police officer accused in the shooting of Von Derek Myers Jr., was arrested after fleeing the scene of an accident where it was discovered that he was intoxicated and under the influence of illegal drugs, including cocaine. While he has resigned his position since the arrest, this is calling into question his state of mind and sobriety during his tenure as an officer, including at the time of the shooting of Mr. Myers. Jesse Benn, notable journalist and activist, is facing several days at least in jail due to some contrived charges of blocking a roadway in the course of filming a protest. No quick summary can fully explain the intricacies of this or the other listed situations. However, so we would be remiss to not bring it to your attention at all, and please see our Twitter again for the full articles on his case and updates to come on it. And those are our special reports for this week. Again, please follow at Issues Today for the full news, and we can be reached now as well at issuestoday@gmail.com for any of our listeners who may have questions for the show, its hosts or guests, or who may wish to suggest topics for future episodes, future special reports, or anything else. Please be in touch, listeners. We so look forward to your feedback. And thank you, Kervin and David, for your time.
Thank you very much for that, Denman. But just to go on for that, isn't it horrific, some of the reports that we've just heard on our roundup at the way that the homeless are being treated in particular? And, you know, before we announced this particular news, we had a meeting during the week, and we decided that we wanted to do something other than just come on here and report about the stuff that's going on around the world. But we felt something within us that would enable us as a worldwide broadcasting organization to make a difference in every corner of the world where we were. So right now,
as Team Dismount, which as a support and loving service, it links up very nicely. I think there that to actually build community rather than simply talking about it after the fact, right?
Absolutely. So I'm going to give you a brief announcement now, but the full announcement will come later when we officially launch it. But Issues Today are going to be launching a worldwide homeless feeding program. That is going to be initiated in every country in the world. And what we're looking for is our listeners and people who are prepared to step in and orchestrate that from where they are as we collate it from where we are. But the bottom line is we're looking to go worldwide with this. We haven't got feet on the ground in every country in the world, obviously. It's a very large call. But the situation that the homeless are going through, in particular around the world, is very close to our hearts. And one of the things that we find that is a definite contributory fact is police brutality, unlawful killing, and a breakdown of family relationships, which normally result in people becoming homeless. And so therefore we want to try and find a way to meet that need wherever it might be, and we're looking for volunteers worldwide to make themselves known to us that we can start putting our plan into practice. We do have a theory, we do have a method, and we do have a way to do this that has already been proven successful. What we're looking for is people who are prepared to volunteer and get on board with this project. So contact...
Or people with already established smaller programs that would be interested in linking up.
Absolutely. So get in touch with us at Issues Today or at Team Denmum, and we will start the dialogue and the communication in ready for the launch of this particular project, which will be going out live soon. Right. So that's that. That's our announcements for today. So let's just give ourselves a big round of applause, because this is Issues Today, right?
It is issues today. So many issues we have today, and we're talking about them right now.
Absolutely, and I just think that's an absolutely brilliant initiative. And anybody that wants to get on board with that, please feel free to come and join us. Contact us and let us know that you're interested, and we'll give you some more information on where we intend to go with that next. Right, moving very quickly, we have a good group of guests for you today, including Annette Blankenship, Andy Christopherson, and Satish Sekar. And let's first and foremost go to our very good friend who was with us last week also and has been with us for a few weeks now as we've been embedded in Albuquerque, our very own Andy Christopherson. Good evening, Andy.
Good evening, Kervin. How's it going?
Well, it's I'm not sure whether we're better off or worse than you where you are. You guys have had the snow blizzards, snowed under and having to use your shovels. We haven't quite had that yet, but we've been warned that the winds are coming, the rain's coming, the cold's coming, so we might have to be battening down ourselves. But most importantly, how are things at your side of the world, sir?
Well, we don't have the snow that the East Coast is getting, but it's still been very cold. And every night now that it gets super cold, the first thing I think is somebody's dying tonight. Yeah. It's been that cold this winter, but we're not getting what the East Coast is getting, thank God. But everything else is going good, though. It's the same old Albuquerque corruption and tyranny, but pretty good.
The funny thing is, the more we look at the impact that journalism and activism is actually having on the very causes that it represents, is the more we're beginning to realize just how much it could not survive without it. And I do believe as we progress through this show, we're going to unravel that in such a way that people will see just how significant, how important, how necessary journalism and activism goes hand in hand with bringing truth and transparency to what happens on our communities on a day-to-day basis. And I look forward to engaging you in that as the show progresses. So thank you very much, Andy. We also have with us Satish Sekar, who is an author and a journalist who wrote the book The Cardiff 5 or the Cardiff 3, whichever way he prefers to put it this time. It started off as a Cardiff 3, but it was five people that were initially arrested and charged with the murder they did not commit. And he also heads up the Fitted In project, which is the book and everything else that goes with that. Now, good evening, Satish.
Good evening, Kervin.
How are you? Your signal is just a little bit low. Do you want to get closer to your microphone, sir, and introduce yourself? And the bottom line is we're going to be looking at the parallel between the UK and the USA and what we can learn from each other based on what we've already experienced and achieved and accomplished. So it's a big good evening to you, and we look forward to hearing what you've got to contribute to the show in various aspects as we take the show forward. We also have with us Annette Blankenship. Hi, Annette. Hi, Annette.
Annette.
Okay, and Annette is a criminal justice reform advocate from Virginia. She's been involved in an advocacy and activism for a couple of decades now, 20-odd years or so, and she has hands-on experience with family and communities and court issues, giving legal advice and guidance. And she will be bringing a different approach to the agenda. So please stay with us and say a good evening to our good friend, Annette Blankenship. Good evening, Annette.
Good evening.
Okay, so your very first time on the show, so we do welcome you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's then, Mum.
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking at we've done our introductions, which we're very good on, so we can pat ourselves on the back. Let's familiarise ourselves with where we are. How does journalism expose misconduct? And maybe we can start with possibly Andy, or did we? No, we needed to go into something else first, didn't we?
Yeah, I think in order to discuss how journalism exposes misconduct, I think it'd be very, very good if we could familiarize ourselves a bit with the cases that Satish and Andy have been looking into all this time, right? Because that at least would provide a nice object example for the general conversation, no?
Yep, I had the piece of paper on the wrong side. My God. Mistake.
You're getting slapped after the program, just so you know.
And I did say that I was going to give you an absolutely exhilarating performance today, right? Because I've had to make you guys.
You promised wonderment.
I did, and I promised that because I've made you guys have to work twice as hard. Well, Satish did anyway. Anyhow, we're gonna not rock that boat now. I'll behave myself. But Satish, do you want to just give us allow yourselves a few moments to familiarise our listeners with the case that is the Cardiff Five?
Okay, well, I'm assuming people don't know about it, so I'll start at the beginning. Essentially what happened is, on Valentine's Day 1988, a young woman named Lynette White was the victim of what was then the most brutal murder of its type in Welsh history. We're talking over 50 stab wounds. There was clear evidence at the crime scene, including the pathology and also the blood spatter evidence, which showed only one person acting on his own committed that crime. Somehow, despite knowing this, 10 months later, 5 men were charged with her murder. And the evidence was, to put it mildly, completely ridiculous. But somehow, after that, 2 of them were acquitted at what was then the longest trial in British history, a murder trial. And then in 1992, the remaining 3 defendants who were convicted were acquitted on appeal. After that, I started to get even more involved in the case because I recognised it was one of these cases that it was possible to find the real perpetrator. And if you did that, you absolutely proved that the original people were innocent, which is part of the aim and also to secure justice for Lynette, the victim of this wretched and terrible crime. She is entitled to an investigation that was properly conducted, as are her family. They are as entitled to justice as are the Cardiff Five, the innocent people wrongly accused of this crime. The end result was it took 11 further years after their acquittal to get the police to not just reopen this case, but actually find the real murderer. And in that time, I had written my first book, which was featured in the Cardiff 3 and the Lynette White inquiry, which exposed what had gone wrong in the original inquiry and was advocating for an investigation and the reopening of this case to go and find the real murderer. It actually was reopened within a year of my making that call and predicting that there would be a DNA testing system coming soon that would actually get useful results from samples such as this. It happened within 6 months of my saying that was going to happen. Afterwards, they found the real perpetrator, and credit where it's due, it was a fantastic investigation that actually managed to do this. I've subsequently written a second book which explains how all this happened and brings it as near to being up to date as you can, as I could at that time. Because what happened with it is that once they found the real killer, it meant that it was patently obvious that the original 5 men were innocent, and you had to explain how did this happen and what can be done to prevent it from happening again. That resulted in what was now the biggest investigation of police malpractice in a miscarriage of justice case that Britain has ever seen. It resulted in several people being arrested, that's 34, of whom 20 were police officers. They then had a trial of, I believe it was, there were 13 police officers who were due to stand trial, and there were 3 witnesses and 2 more that actually were charged and were standing trial as well. But they made a complete hash, or the criminal justice system made a complete hash of that trial, and have rolled back many of the gains that were actually made by forcing people to keep quiet about it. It's basically saying that there are no reporting restrictions except on anybody who is actually trying to report it.
Wow. And on that point, we're going to stop you there because that's going to lead quite clearly into where we're going next. Bearing that in mind, that's a beautiful introduction to the case, one that I was personally involved with, which is how I met Satish in the first place, and we'll kind of investigate that line as we move forward. Andy, can you just familiarise the listeners with a couple of the cases that we're going to be looking at in order for us to round up this particular series of issues that we're dealing with, journalism and activism, and particular, let's look at the James Boyd and the Ronaldo Chavez cases. If you just want to remind people of the scenarios relating to those two cases in particular.
Well, sure, because those two cases are intertwined and sort of expose a whole lot of other cases. Real quick background on the James Boyd case. He was a mentally ill homeless person who had left the downtown area of Albuquerque to the foothills to seek a place of shelter. More importantly, a safe place of shelter. As he was up there, his neighbors that were surrounding the foothills area called police to report an illegal camper because, you don't want to look at a homeless man out of your backyard, I guess. So APD not only showed up, but they showed up in force with 30 police in riot gear and wound up over a several-hour exchange, wound up shooting and killing James Boyd as he had turned around to grab his bags to surrender. Getting to Ronaldo Chavez. Ronaldo Chavez was the records custodian for the Albuquerque Police Department. He handled all records, public records, lapel videos, everything that was used in investigations was oversaw by him. Well, because of citizen journalists, went after his videos or video of lapels and every bit of investigation into that case, and citizens exposed things that the mainstream media never saw. For instance, Charlie Grabsky, who's a guest on your show, had gone after the lapel videos and found a dash cam video with Keith Sandy, one of the people that put a bullet in James Boyd, actually had said 2 hours before he shot him that he was going to shoot this fucking lunatic in the penis. Now, had Charlie not gone after and got that video, if he hadn't fought, because it wasn't like they were just turning him over, he was constantly having to hound the records department. If he hadn't got that, nobody would have known that there was a premeditated murder. Now, this is a citizen. Charlie's not he does stuff for other, Guardian, PINAC and stuff, but in reality, it's citizens, that got this. It wasn't the mainstream media. That being said, Ronaldo Chavez has now been fired from the department and has since then claimed a whistleblower protection lawsuit and is ratting out the rest of the chief of police, the mayor, the mayor's chief administrative officer, city attorneys are all been named in this lawsuit against the city. The interesting thing about this is some of the cases that he specifically points to are very high-profile shootings. One in particular was the James Boyd and a civil rights lawyer who was murdered by the police department and covered up. Her whole scene was covered up because of the corruption that she had been exposing. This was mentioned in Ronaldo's lawsuit, that he was directed to not provide these records and information to the public. He was told by the city to find ways to not provide them. Now, the first video, the video that you've all seen or most people have seen of James Boyd being killed, is a lapel video that was being worn by the helmet of Officer Perez. Well, we can't get that video. That video no longer exists according to APD records. Wow. So the pattern here is that not only can they control, what we're seeing, but they make it very, very difficult and make you not even want to go after those records because they make it so burdensome. But it's a direct attempt to cover up police misconduct. And we don't have enough mainstream media with the balls to really dig and to really ask those hard-hitting questions, or to find, to scour through videos. And it takes a lot of time. So, but it's very important that Charlie did.
Now tell me this, Satish. Tell me this. What is the value of the homes around that area where the police sent in all these armed?
That's a good question, David. That's a very good question, because where that area is more of our upper middle class. It's not like the rich area of town, but it's definitely an upper middle class moneyed area. And yes, the people that live around there they didn't like the view of him being behind him. And I understand. You have kids and stuff, and you don't want to. But what happened was the police response wasn't like they brought out the crisis intervention team. They weren't called out for a long time after he was initially responded to. And when you come up to a mentally ill person who suffers from PTSD, who has a record of violence, you come up with him with an AR-15 and dogs and lapel and vests and looking scary, you're going to escalate the situation. And he went off on a complete tyrant of, he's mentally ill. But as he turned around, he was blown away.
Would you expect the police to give a similar or equal response had someone in a lower economic area phoned and said that some rich guy with his car was driving through the neighborhood noises?
I think so.
What would they do?
I think so, David. I think because the mentality. Let me give you a quick background on the people that responded to James Boyd. The team that responded to him was called the ROP, the ROPE team, which was the Repeat Offenders Unit. And these guys went after the hardcore criminals, like the repeat offenders, felons, real bangers, right? That's who responded to a homeless, mentally ill man. I think that regardless of where the call came from, I think that team, that they were responsible for a lot of unjust shootings. They liked to play with their gear. They liked to play with their military equipment. And any chance that they get to roll it out, they would. And that team has since been disbanded by the Department of Justice. After the DOJ came here and did their investigation, they found that most of the people that were on that ROP team had records themselves and had, been involved in other high-profile shootings. So I don't think it really mattered where the call came from. I think they just, it's that militarized dick swinging mentality. Period.
It's funny that you should mention the value of houses in connection to the location of this particular incident involving James Boyd, but it's the complete opposite end to the location of Lynette White's murder, where it was a black community, poverty-stricken. I believe at the time that Lynette White was murdered, it was 98% of the locality were unemployed. And most of them were sofa mums and dads who their children grew up as, watching their mums and dads sit on the sofa at 9 o'clock in the morning on their way to school watching TV. And it's amazing how the approach differs where money and class comes to play.
Can I jump in there real quick?
Absolutely.
The Department of Justice just released their consent decree on Ferguson. And when I read that compared to the consent decree that Albuquerque was given, it's completely different, and it's based off of that. In Ferguson, it was like they were really, they really targeted those types of, lower class neighborhoods. In Albuquerque, that is very true, but was never mentioned in the DOJ consent decree. And people here fought very hard for them to add that into part of the reforms, and they didn't have it. New Mexico does not have a very big black population, but we have an extremely high Hispanic and Native American population. And ex-police officers that we talked to and who participated in the tribunal that Dinah and Steve had hosted and stuff, they straight up said that they targeted the Mexican nationals or anyone that they felt, that they could profile, that they figured that they could get something else on them out of their charge. And they do treat people proportionately different. We have an area here called Tanawan. It's sort of the Ritchie area of town. And yeah, they don't pull that in their neighborhoods. They don't target people up there. They go after the people in the lower class neighborhoods. And I think you're going to find that everywhere. But it's something that's not talked about here. And it's strange to me because we do have a racial issue here, but it was never mentioned in our decree, and activists here fought damn hard, and it never got put on. I'm sorry to go. That was not quick like I said it would be. Sorry.
That's fine, because all of this actually needs to be explained, in order for us to get a full understanding of what's taking place. And the funniest things to me, it's and this is just off the back of my head, when I think about all of these accidental killings, unlawful killings, wrongful arrests, and wrongful convictions, and all the rest of it, it all seems to be happening in the poor communities to the poor people and the same class of people all the time. And I'm just wondering why that might be. The rich get away with crimes, and the poor just get shot, killed, and imprisoned. I don't know. That's just a statement coming from me off the top of my head, out of nowhere. Bloop, there it is. It's out there. But
I don't understand the history of Albuquerque that allows it to. I mean, when I think of New Mexico, I think of Santa Fe, Taos, so beautiful, the cathedral caverns. The people are a lot of retired white people out there, White Sands, mountains. I think even Carol Burnett has a place out there. How does Albuquerque? As I recall, I drove through Albuquerque when I was about 13 years old, and all I remember was a pair of railroad tracks and a Kentucky Fried Chicken. I don't know why that is, but that was long ago.
And as long as they got a Kentucky Fried Chicken, it ain't a bad place.
It didn't have to be that long ago. I mean, I don't know how old you are, David, but this place exploded throughout the late 70s and through the 80s, where we had an extreme population increase.
Okay, so I was there in 1972 as a 12-year-old.
Yeah, there was nothing here.
And there was nothing there. It was flat, tumbleweeds. I remember that my grandfather drove over the railroad tracks and said, "Hey, boys, don't blink. This is a blink town. You blink and you miss it."
And it really was.
And it really sounds like that, but listen.
What happened that it developed into this town that has such a ferocious and anti-minority driven police force? I mean, who made the police force? Who indoctrinated them?
It's been around for very long, and it goes back to the white. It's just sort of white supremacist type policing that I kind of believe it all sort of is now. But have you heard of the Brown Berets? They were a Latino group activist group that started it in the 70s to protect their communities from policing. They figured, listen, you stay out of our neighborhoods and we're going to take care of these problems. And for the most part, they did. But up until that time happened, the police ran rampant in this one area of town, the South Valley of New Mexico, which at the time was one of the most populated areas of Albuquerque. And in 1971 or 1972, we actually had a uprising from the students at University of New Mexico, and mainly because of civil rights violations by the police. And it was the people from the South Valley, the Brown Berets, and a lot of Native Americans and university students came up Central Avenue and threw rocks through Civic One's windows and fires.
Can we just butt in here now? Let's just butt in.
I'm sorry.
No, the histrionics are great, and we don't want to dismiss the histrionics. The histrionics are great, fantastic. But what we really want to get to, even in that question, how does journalism actually bring this kind of stuff to light? Because what we really want to focus on this particular show, what we want to get out there, especially today, is the impact that journalism and activism has on all these issues. These are prominent issues, they're taking place, they're heartfelt issues, people are affected by them. But how does journalism bring this stuff to light?
I think, if I may butt in really fast before that, it's one of the things, it's like the homelessness issue and how that unifies people because of all the different circumstances that can make someone homeless, right? The journalism exposing this sort of thing, it carries over from misconduct and miscarriages of justice. It covers brutality and the systemic injustices that have never been talked about. It covers corruption. It covers all the things that we care about on issues today. So what is it that journalism can really do to make this...
Well, what kind
present
of
in
journalism
people's minds?
Are you talking about? Are you talking about
Any
citizen
kind.
journalism? Because the citizen journalism is absolutely needed right now because more than ever, because journalism in itself has completely changed. The journalism from the 60s and 70s are no longer that type of journalism. It's one-sided funded agendas. And we started our citizen journalism website, Berkey Media, as a collective citizen journalism to bring the view other than what the mainstream media is bringing, because the mainstream media does one thing. They want to fill their 30 minutes of airtime. They say, listen, here's what happened today. We just got a response from police. Talk to you tomorrow. That's usually it. Citizens have the ability, especially with social media, live stream, to be on the street to say, look, this is what's happening right here, right now. You don't have to worry about the agenda. Sure, some of it may be biased, but in reality, you're getting a different view. I have more of a, I believe more in the indie journalists and the social media live streaming and live tweeting to get information, because now it's like we want our news now. We want to know what's happening by the minute. That's how it's in fact, really influencing and changing and exposing corruption.
Trying to bring in Annette as quickly as I possibly can. Annette, are you there? Annette, are you there? Okay.
You've lost Annette.
Satish?
Yeah.
Okay. So, with miscarriages of justice in particular, how does journalism and what sort of journalism brings that kind of issue to light? What works in the UK in comparison to what Andy has just discussed that takes place out in America?
Well, the function of journalism must be to expose and to inform. And the problem is the outlets, or the traditional outlets for that type of journalism, have been closing down for years. You used to look to investigative journalists to expose these things, but how many of them are there? How many have the resources and the outlets to do this? This is one of the main reasons why citizen journalism has functioned, has developed. There has been no option. In order to inform the public and for them to have informed activism and for activists to be able to do what they do, you have to have a steady flow of information. And essentially that means you now have to get used to the fact that journalism has changed completely. The old days of looking to TV and national newspapers or even newspapers are gone. The internet has changed that completely. It has enabled anybody to do what journalists do. The function is, sorry, not the function. The problem that I find in particular is that it's quite deliberate in making it very, very difficult to get hold of this information when it makes a difference. Even the case like the Cardiff 5, and it's not unique in this effect. When you go covering trials and you get to do that, you have to go and see the information, and it takes ages to do it, and that's deliberate. Like the whole way that the Cardiff 5 case was done was to make sure that you couldn't find out the information that was absolutely damning to the case against them until they decided it was too late. The idea was you were never supposed to find it out. But if you did find it out, they were going to make it as difficult as they possibly could for it to come out in time. And what they did to me was I was covering this case for a very, very long time, and I knew it backwards, if you want to put it like that. So they made it, they managed to get me turned into a witness. And that meant, because I was a witness, I couldn't go to the trial. And I was the one person who was going to see what was going on. And the reason I would say that for definite is I eventually got hold of the transcripts of the trial. And as soon as you see what is in these transcripts, the first 2 weeks of the trial, you know exactly what they're trying to do. They're not just rewriting history, they're obliterating it. The function of journalism must be to expose this and prevent it from happening again. So this is where you need citizen journalism now. You need an informed public, and the only way to inform them is by using the outlets that are out, that have developed in the, well, let's call it the new world, because it's completely different. Journalism is completely different when I started.
Citizen journalism, is that a new term? Andy?
I think so. It sort of kind of has gotten, the term has gotten more popular since Ferguson went down because of all the live streamers that were out every night, and they were giving updates on what was happening, and people don't want to really call you a journalist unless you've gone to school for it. So the term citizen journalist kind of popped up over the last 2 years.
David.
Yeah.
You know, as somebody sitting on the sidelines, not so much an activist, but a lecturer, professor, and somebody who's quite knowledgeable in history and prosecutorial misconduct, what difference have you seen citizen journalism make to the very cases that you've helped advocate for?
I think it seems to me that citizen journalism is, first of all, the authorities don't want to recognize it. Why? They don't want to give any imprimatur on another organization, like the First Amendment press rights, which they're entitled to citizens. They don't want people checking up on them. And if they are, they don't want them to have any kind of immunity because of a First Amendment right. Therefore, the phrase citizen journalist is a way for them, those in power, to discount and to deny the rights and privileges to those citizens who are doing exactly nothing beyond what a reporter or a journalist has been doing for 200 years, 300 years, long before there were any schools of journalism. So that's the first thing. Second thing, in terms of prosecutors and citizen journalism, I would say citizen journalists are as important to what we are about as a free people as are people who form these projects, like the Innocent Project. What does the Innocence Project do? It goes into prisons, it pulls out records in court systems, it tests DNA, it tests forensic evidence, it double checks what prosecutors and their misconduct do, and worse, in their malfeasance and political objectives do. And these people, and there are a lot of good lawyers, one, as you well know, was on the O.J. Simpson trial. What these citizen prosecutors and defense counsels do is double check what the prosecutorial system and judicial system in America is doing. And they have freed thousands of people, and they have taken 170 people off of death row, and they have discovered people who were put to death wrongly in America and with false evidence. So when I hear anyone say that citizen journalists are not journalists, I ask them, are these lawyers who are running and non-lawyers who are running forensic and innocence projects, like also in Alabama they have in Montgomery, the what is that called? The the human rights organization Morris Dees founded down there. They're doing so many things to free innocent people. So I equate them together. And anyone who tries to suppress them, denigrate them, or run them down has a motivation that goes beyond justice and probably is revolving around opportunism, careerism, service to the master, and money. Believe me.
You know, here's the thing. And maybe, Denmum, you might just want to come in here for a minute, because has there been a difference, of approach to formal journalism, to citizens journalism? And secondly, has there been a difference in access to information and material between the two? What is the difference, and how does that change the outcome of information that comes out in order to support whatever it is that they're trying to challenge?
Oh, well, you've risked putting me on a real tear with that one.
I take the risk.
Yes, you're a risk taker. The straight fact of the matter is that, you know, in the Team Den Mother sort of initiative that we're doing, and all the things that we do, and there are many kinds of support that we offer, but during the times of protest and things like that, when cities are in upheaval or uprising or something, you know, one of the many tools that we employ is simultaneous monitoring of the mainstream media outlets, the social media outlets, and the live streamers, and any other source that we can really get our hands on to have real-time access to what truly is going on. And that is a way to not only stay up to date, but to keep individuals on all sides of a given, you know, situation safe and looked after and supported, right? So there's been a strong contrast that's been noticed in some of the recent major situations where we'll literally have somebody with Twitter and Facebook and flipping channels on the television with, you know, MSNBC, CNN, and all the rest of the mainstream news airing at the same times as they're following the Twitter feeds and whatever else is public access, you know, if scanners are available in their area, that kind of thing legally. And it's wild. It's truly wild to see. First of all, the boots on the ground in any given situation usually do have more on point, more timely information, but it's often incomplete. So you have to synthesize between all the different people who are individually witnessing whatever. But then again, the journalists who stationed wherever they're stationed, wherever they've set up their cameras, are also getting, you know, a limited perspective and are often being steered by the guy at the desk to talk about things. There was a gentleman on CNN, I believe, during the Baltimore protests who just was straight up in defiance of the desk, who was saying, oh, well, this and that, this really sounds an awful lot like that. And he's like, no, this is what's happening. You have to listen to me now. And so it's just very interesting to see how any given media outlet or individual, whether they're a quote unquote real journalist or just some guy who's saying, this is what I'm seeing out my window right now, is perceiving it. And so, like, you've got to synthesize from all of this the truth. Because there's bias everywhere, whether it's just by limited vantage or by the mainstream media outlet and who may or may not be paying for that airtime or whatever. And I think that all of it needs to be considered useful and valuable media. Social media is, in essence, journalism, as I pointed out last week, because you got real people saying, this is a thing that I'm seeing, and citizen journalists out there live streaming a thing, that is what they're seeing. Everybody's seeing what they're seeing, and everybody's got direction that, you know, it's got to go in some fashion to make a narrative that makes sense. But when you look at it all together, that's where you come closer to finding the truth. And when you come closer to finding the truth, then you can come closer to achieving real justice.
Amen. Thank you very much for that. And I suppose part of what we really mean in trying to round that up, for me, is the difference between social journalism and citizen journalism is the editing restrictions and legalities that surrounds social journalism that comes through mainstream media such as TV and radios, etc., and the freedom with which a citizen journalist operates in, which is just to give you the hardcore facts. I suppose that's the real...
But then again, you have to consider that they're usually operating on a third-party platform, so the limitations to what they may or may not be able to say, whether or not they have the ability to maintain their account, can be limited simply by a third party, in essence, a corporate entity.
Absolutely.
So it's never truly out of the question.
But the difference still relies on, if you was to ask a citizen journalist his account of what he just witnessed, it would be very different to the one that a social journalist would be allowed to express.
They'll tell you that. The other, like mainstream media, will tell you that. They will say exactly, look, I wish I could say what you say. I've had so many of them say that. Like, even on social media, I don't know if you ever noticed, watch how they communicate with each other. It's completely fake and like really scripted, right? Well, they can't, we don't have to be like that. And I've had so many mainstream guys say, man, I wish I could say what you say, but you know,
give me an example. Give an example.
How about using the word fuck? Or any, I mean, really, that's how it is.
How about, you know, I'm sorry, this I believe in October of, wasn't a BBC reporter who just absolutely lost it on air?
Yeah, it was.
Spoke from his heart for like 2 seconds and then was clearly like wondering, was he going to keep his job at all, or was he about to be sacked or something? It was hysterical, but it was also about as honest as somebody could ever be on a mainstream camera.
Well, I'm thinking of a guy who worked for CNN during the Gaza uprising. I can't remember his name. He's got an Arabic-sounding name, and he was reporting, and he said, you know, a bomb just hit here. Here's 5 babies laying dead, and he was pulled out and sent to Egypt immediately. He was almost fired just for reporting something so simple.
I've been told to say something like this. Citizen journalists are providing the function of community building by providing the truth that allows communities to unify and police their own, which empowers people and threatens those profiting off of controlling the information. And that's come from my production team. And I think that's a great way of summing up what citizen journalism is, because at the end of the day, everybody else seems to be profiting from it and yet restricting the truth.
I'll give you an example real quick.
Go ahead.
We have a newspaper photographer here who won an award for one of his pictures during the tear gassing test of James Boyd. Well, this guy, we see him being escorted by APD behind police lines, like at a SWAT situation or a shooting. They give him access that we don't get. Meanwhile, back several hundred yards from scenes. So they're able to say, okay, we'll bring this paper guy in, and he's going to, you know, the mainstream media, he can report it this way, so we're going to give him access. So that same reporter sometimes, most of the time, won't rip on them or, you know, give them hard questions, or if they uncover something, they don't say anything because, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
If I may, there's another thing that should be mentioned, and that is we shouldn't be letting mainstream media off the hook. They still have a responsibility to report, and they're not doing it, and they need to be called out about it.
Oh, absolutely, and that's the whole point. I mean, I suppose sooner or later you're going to be looking at mainstream media and you're going to be asking yourself, is it actually relevant anymore? Is mainstream media relevant anymore? Because if we're not being given the truth, if they're not allowed to tell the truth, then what's the point of tuning in to try and find out what's going on if they're not going to tell us?
Let me add in here a dilemma, and Satish brought it up, and I think, Kervin, you did. The dilemma is this. In the United States, we give the press, television, radio, or journalism, print, we give them a special designation in the First Amendment. They're like a church, or your right to speak freely, assemble, petition the government. So they're given this special right. In fact, it's so special in our elementary and high schools, we teach our young people that they're the fourth tier of government. You have the legislative, you've got the executive, you've got the judicial, and then you've got the press as the watchdog. So they're given this sacrosanct position. But when it comes down to it, the press in the United States will tell you flat out, their job is to make money for their owners. So there's the dilemma. It's a for-profit organization that has no duty whatsoever to the American people. but it claims a very special saying within the American system, and that is the dilemma.
Okay, and I totally accept it, and I'm going to expand on social media in comparison to citizen journalism, and I want to take this back to the Cardiff 5 case because I remember this quite prominently, and correct me if I go wrong anyway, Satish, because I know that you are the expert in this, but if I remember correctly, one of the reasons why it was so easy to convict the Cardiff 5 or the Cardiff 3 and get the people to believe, or not even the people to believe, to get people to side with the prosecution's event of things, was that the national and local newspapers, which were the South Wales Echo and Western Mail, although the Western Mail came out daily and a bit earlier, the South Wales Echo didn't actually come out until mid-afternoon. And what used to happen on a daily basis was that the defence went in, the prosecution went in first and laid out their questions and interrogated whoever it was that was in the box, and then South Wales Echo went to press, long before the defence could actually rebut law or challenge anything that was suggested. And every single day, the South Wales Echo, all they printed daily for people to digest and chew on was what the prosecution had to offer in line with this case. And by the time the trial was ready to go to a decision, the only information that anybody had in order for them to consider whether or not these guys were guilty or innocent was what the press had printed, which was the prosecution case, and the defence didn't get a look in. Am I correct, or am I making this up, Satish?
Well, not really, because don't forget the defence did have the right to put their case. When it came to the defence case, they were going first. So at that point, that can't be the case. I think part of the problem with this is that with the whole issue is when a trial is going on, you are only allowed to report what came out in the court. It's covered by the Contempt of Court Act. And the problem is that means you can only, the prosecution will say what they want and establish the evidence they want that will come out in the court, and the defence will do the same. Now, what happens if you actually know something that would change all the trial? What are you actually supposed to do with this information? Because you're actually not allowed to report it under the Contempt of Court Act. You have to wait until the trial is over. And by that time, the damage has been done. Either whatever the verdict happened to be, you can't affect it anymore. You have to go through and wait for the appeal process. But at that point, who's interested? What you found with this particular case, and I have to say, I find it, the conduct of the media in this case, absolutely appalling, because you've had at least 7 TV documentaries, and they still haven't managed to tell the truth about it. That must be some kind of record.
Absolutely. And again, I'm not sure if Annette is back yet. Annette?
I'm here.
Okay, we have been trying to get you in for a while, and we have been looking at how journalism has exposed misconduct in particular. We've looked at miscarriages of justice, and as a criminal justice reform advocate, maybe you might have something that you might want to add as to how the difference between the impact between social media and citizen journalism, and how that has affected cases that you've advocated for.
So journalism that we see on TV, the media, the newspapers, radios, and films, they are only controlled by government and big CEOs. They can only say certain things. They can only do certain things. I've been doing this for over a decade now, the journalism part, looking for stories, looking for people to get involved in criminal justice reform, because I've been a criminal justice reform advocate. I have seen in the last decade, and most especially now with MySpace, and since I think Ferguson, in the last couple of years, I have seen people, what they tell us on TV, what we hear on the radio, it is controlled. It is controlled by that station. It is controlled by companies that do not want the general public to know what we stand for. What we are doing now, we have through social media, we have networking through citizen journalism, we are being our own media for our people. You see, I see us reporting stories that my local news and the national news don't report till later on after it gets to check of approval by whoever says it can go or it can't. Now, when it comes to criminal justice reform for the last year and a half or so, I have said and I have added and added and added and added and added thousands and thousands and thousands of people to prison groups, to prison pages, to reentry pages, to rehabilitation pages, to end actual innocence. I have a few groups on Facebook, my own self. One group I created was in 2010 or 9, and it's Actual Innocence. I have created Actual Innocence in Virginia. I'm a monitor to Stop Prisons for Profit, the campaign to Stop Prisons for Profit. Right now is a crucial time. We, the people, have to be our media, because what we hear on the media, pardon me, what did you call the mainstream media?
Mainstream media, social media.
Yeah, it ain't the facts. What we do, what you see us do, us lie people, us on the internet, we're trying to say, hey, look, our government is corrupt, our government is very broken. Me, myself, I can say, look, I have been watching my General Assembly. I have been watching my legislators. I have watched my legislators pass the writ of actual innocence based on non-biological and biological here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I have seen 3 inmates apply for the writs of actual innocence. Personally, my own self, with 2 of them still being in prison, and then the other one pulled his entire time and wasn't even recognized after two law firms, not 1 but 2 had. We have to stand up as people. We have to say, because media also, if media ain't allowed to say things, then subconsciously it tells us that we need to be quiet. When our number 1 amendment, just like the press, is freedom of speech, now, is it not?
That is
must.
True. Yeah.
Coming in, Denmon.
I was just going to say, I think what she's saying really struck a chord with you remember when last we spoke with Satish, there was a statement he made that was so profound, just the notion of all this as a humanitarian necessity for the greater process of justice, and in the cases of the things that Annette and he have both been working on, vindication of the individuals and the actual truth. And I was just going to ask Annette if she felt that that's what, if that rings true to what she's saying as well, that all this initiative by individuals on media, social media, citizen journalism, and all that would actually be qualifiable as a humanitarian necessity.
I would say yes, because we need people like us. We need to do this. I do this day in and day out. I've done it straight forward. Some days I have to take off, but I give my heart and soul. And I tell you, we need, young people are starting to get involved. Young people are getting tired of being locked up. And addiction is an epidemic around this world. We do not need to lock up addicts. We do not need to lock up a mother because she's caught with the drug and then not give her food stamps here in America or here in Virginia because she was convicted. That's taken away from that whole family. We are supposed to be about building families, not tearing them down. And it takes a village to raise a child, and it also takes a village to help an addict. We got to start, like Barack Obama said, we need to start working together. We need to start caring about one another, and we need to realize that we, the people, need to hold our governments accountable.
Absolutely agreed, Annette. Moving over to you very swiftly, Andy. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Andy. In that case, if humanitarian, if citizen journalism is a humanitarian necessity, then has that caused an inspiration, not just to you but to others, to engage in citizen journalism.
Well, I hope so. I hope so.
And
what we're really lost without that.
Yeah. And what difference has it actually? Yeah. What difference has it? Yeah. What difference has it actually made to you? And how does it encourage and motivate you?
On the humanitarian end, it's like you can actually see yourself actually helping in a different way through your journalism. So that's been inspirational to me personally. As far as the youth getting involved and the new movement of journalists, I think that because of the uprisings that have happened and the lack of media coverage that was there, mainstream media coverage, and the way that they did put it out, turned a lot of the youth away because they started saying, well, damn, I'm going to get on my laptop in my college dorm room and watch, Stack's stream or Reb Z's stream. And they were able to, then they see this and they see people standing up to the police that you normally wouldn't see through the mainstream media's eyes. And citizen journalism is basically a voice for the people. You're speaking on you don't have that platform. That's inspirational enough to me, where I don't feel responsible to have to answer to anyone. That's awesome. I can say what I want.
Absolutely, and on top of that, one of the things that I've noticed since we've started doing this show on World Jam Global, and I've started. I mean, our other producer, who's we wish her well, Linda, who's tuning in as we speak.
Hi, Linda.
But once we started doing this, one of the things that I noticed as I started to get this information through from Linda, and then obviously now from Denmom and Ninjet, as I keep getting this information through, and I'm posting it, and I'm posting it in the other groups that I'm in that are non-connected to the USA. I have people here in British groups that are actually going, wow, how long has this been going on for then? Because they don't actually get it. We don't get it in our news here. And David, I want to just move to you very quickly. Isn't what we're doing citizen journalism, and doesn't that just put a fire in your belly?
Yes, because everyone, from the time we're born, we ask, why are we here? Why am I here? Why am I on Earth? What is my purpose? What is my goal? And I find that people who live and have no desire to make the world better or even worse. There's a saying that we have for God. God says, you can love me, you can hate me, but you cannot ignore me. And I think that's about the way I look at life. You can do good, you can do bad. But those who do nothing, then it's as though they never lived.
Yeah.
And those of us who are articulate, who do know how to write, who are interested in the world, who find injustice a cancer eating at the heart of the individual and eating at the foundations like termites of our society. A society that allows a betrayal of the social contract, that allows politicians to come out and tell blatant lies, who quote things falsely, who give false evidence, who do nothing but acquire for themselves power and aggrandizement. They can only be curtailed by the action of the activist citizen. And instead of citizens picking up weapons and mops and pitchforks and swords like they did in the old days in Paris of the Commune, in 1789 of the Revolution, in America's Revolution with the militia against Britain, or even with Spartacus and the slave uprising against Rome. We are now picking up the pen and the radio and the internet, and we are coming full force. And what are we doing? We are not exposing their entrails, their dirty and black hearts. We are exposing truth. And in that truth shines the light of justice. So if you ask me if that sets me on fire, there are a lot of things I could do on this nice Saturday afternoon than sit here. But I sit here because I'm committed to making a difference. As Socrates said, a man who cannot ask himself questions cannot ever know the meaning of life.
Amen to that. Denmom.
I can't agree more with David, but also I think it really, is worth stressing that, I mean, the things that we're talking about here, as we always like to point out, that we spoke about last week with the notion of dealing with homelessness as an individual crisis as well as a global one and all that. These results that are achieved because of people putting their pens and keyboards to work, all of that, these affect real actual lives. These are the victims and the wrongly accused. These are their families, and it affects society at large. You know, justice is not something that's exclusive to somebody who had a miscarriage of it. Justice is something that we all deserve, that we all live within a system that's supposed to provide it to us. And also, when you've got people sitting here, you know, giving up our Saturday afternoons and evenings and working as hard as we do, and as Andy and his cohorts do, and everyone else who so much as has a Twitter feed, let alone a blog or a live stream or something like that, it inspires others to activism. I mean, Kervin, you and I were just talking about that, how it was the independent news and the release of this information into our sort of mind stream that galvanized us either back into or initially into whatever our movements of choice were in the first place. Because if you don't know what's going on, how can you be active in it? How can you have the desire to be active in it, right? So it really affects lives all around.
But it's not just the individual, and Andy can comment to this too. Take, for example, the biggest white elephant, so to speak, no pun intended, the biggest white elephant right now in the United States is that Iowa has about 3% black population, almost 1% Hispanic. New Hampshire is as white as the White Mountains. It is all white. And yet, the two most important primaries, or caucus and primary, in the United States of America are in states that are relatively well off, entrenched in the white culture, absent of the minorities, and yet they are doing the most to choose our next president of the United States that is only 65% white. Now tell me, why isn't the mainstream media saying this is a hoax on America? The first two primaries will be in California on the West Coast, New York on the East Coast, and then the next two will be Florida on the South Coast and Chicago and Illinois on the North Coast. And that will give us a really good preview of what is happening in America. And if we could exclude Texas from the election, then we'd have a pretty good nation.
Absolutely. And you know what really excites me, what really ticks my box? I can remember when we led the world on the Sandra Bland case. We did it right here we did it right here, and then we watched as the world tried to play catch up. Once we actually did this right here, that day we had Fatima Mann on the show, who's an absolutely fantastic poet and great activist, leading out front on Black Lives Matter. And secondly, the other thing, the other big victory that we had was when because we didn't actually do it as a major feature on the show, but we touched on it, we talked about it, we brought it out in the open, and we talked about the Laquan Johnson situation and the dash cam video and all the rest of that. And then it was announced about a week.
One in Chicago. Yeah.
That's right. 2 weeks later, we then had it announced that the Justice Supreme Court had ordered the police to release the dash cam video, and that particular story at that time went worldwide. It went viral. It was top of the news bulletin for every news station, for every news channel. And bearing in mind, over a year now, every Saturday we sit down there and we've been doing this police brutality thing. Every Saturday we've been doing this Black Lives Matter thing. Every Saturday we've been doing this unlawful killing thing. And people have just been ignoring it and passing it by. And we've just had this little generation, this little group of people that follow us, that have been listening to what we've been doing. But that day, the whole world stopped as they heard on every news bulletin right across the world that Laquan Johnson mattered. Now that is the effect of the inspiration.
And you know who got that video, right?
Say that again.
The video, Laquan McDonald. You know who got that?
Who got
video,
that?
Right? It was a citizen journalist.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for the citizen journalist who sued to get that video to be released, just like what we're doing with the shooting that happened last year, we're having to sue for them to release that video.
And you play right into the storyline because the Chicago Tribune is wrapped up so far up Mayor Emanuel's anus that they would never do their duty and responsibility in Chicago. The lawyer for the family had been paid off $5.6 million, and he wasn't going to break their deal. The aldermen weren't going to upset the cart because they want things from the mayor, and so it was left to a citizen journalist, somebody like you. And that is exactly why it happened. And I want to ask why. When you have these people like William Crystal on television and Brian Williams and Lawrence McDonald, and they give news and it's false. Lawrence McDonald's been telling us for 9 months that Donald Trump doesn't have a chance, and the man is on the way to winning the nomination. And you take these William Crystal. Every day he's on the news about Iraq is going to create peace. Invading Iran is going to create peace. Let Israel run the United States and we'll be at peace. Let AIPAC run the world and we'll be at peace. He's so wrong on so many issues that he reminds me of a bunch of seashells cracking against each other in a hurricane. And yet they claim some type of authority that we, who are the citizen side of journalism, don't have. Well, I don't believe Benjamin Franklin, who owned the biggest press media in the entire continental United States during the post-Revolutionary War, I don't believe Ben Franklin ever went to any bloody Medill School of Journalism or Columbia School of Journalism and claimed some credential that made him better or more immune from the law than you are, Andy Christopherson.
Absolutely.
I can't agree more.
Absolutely, and then just coming back in and bringing Satish back in just one more minute.
I don't want you to think I'm excited already.
Oh, you sound so excited, David. That's absolutely awesome. But let's just get even more excited because Satish, when we saw the conviction of the Cardiff Three by social media, and then because of the efforts that we made on the streets, that you made with the information that you brought out, the books that came out, and the eventual victory and appeal, and the way that everybody celebrated. If you remember, as we came out onto those steps of the appeal courts after those guys had served 4 years of a life sentence that they were sentenced to for a crime that they did not commit, but when they were set free and we stepped out onto those steps and they tasted freedom for the first time, a freedom that a short time before that they never felt that they were going to be feeling. But at that time, when you just saw that release of energy and the joy that was felt with everybody else as we headed back towards Cardiff, South Wales to celebrate the release, was that not so inspiring that all that time that you'd spent trying to generate this information, trying to provide this information, just so that you can bring the truth to bear, just to see the joy that was in those guys' faces as they gave the press conference across the road at the end of this appeal trial? Did that not just set you on fire again?
Yes, it did, but it's important to note that was only half the job. And this is really necessary that we deal with this, because every time there is a miscarriage of justice, especially one as egregious as this was, it meant that the real perpetrator was still at liberty. And the system gets away with this because we don't take it to the next stage. We keep thinking as soon as you win the case and get the person free, that's the end of the fight. It isn't.
But we fully Satish, we fully accept that. But what we're actually talking about now is the inspiration that's got from somebody who's coming from a citizen's journalist point of view in comparison to social media that helped convict them. And irrespective of whether or not there's an additional fight to be fought, which we all in agreement with, the point that we're trying to make at this precise moment in time is the joy that is felt when citizen journalism gets the decision done that social media couldn't get done. And that was the point I was trying to pull you on. That was a response that I was trying to get from you.
If I may, Kervin, I mean, I certainly don't want to speak for Satish, but I mean, he's a published author, you know. I mean, we've just plugged the book on the Issues Today Twitter so that other people can get a better exposure to this really intricate case that we haven't got nearly enough time to explore on the program today. I mean, he is himself engaging in a form of journalism by way of publishing this stuff, because as we so often say, it's not necessarily about any given individual case and whether or not the perpetrator is brought to justice or things like that. It's the systemic issues, isn't it, with the the police officers and the civil servants and all of that, those are the guys you have to worry whether they're going to do it over and over and over again. Some guy may kill somebody and never do it again, but somebody who's in a position of authority may very well engage in, I'm not even going to say corrupt, but less than fully to the highest standard behavior. If allowed to do so, in one case, they may continue to do so for the rest of their career. And so people like Satish publishing their books, people like Andy putting the news out there for all of us, is so very, very essential to just the entirety of the process and for an informed society.
No, absolutely. But, how does journalism expose misconduct? Third quarter. What can we learn from others? Fourth quarter. I mean, those are the areas that right now I'm inspired. I'm on fire, and I want to talk about the victory. Right? I'm not denying there's other battles to be fought, and there's other areas for us to enter into. But right now, citizens journalism has victory. There has victory in certain small victories. Big battles, right? And there's bigger battles to come. But man, we better start rejoicing in the victories that we're getting, because people are becoming unified and inspired because citizens journalism is now making a stand and it's now coming out with victory. That's the point that I'm trying to make.
I would like to ask everyone, Kervin, you, Denmon, Andy, Annette, Satish, everyone, where do you think? I saw a Twitter the other day, and it was a man, and he was being arrested by the police. And the police said he was interfering in their line of work. And he said, I'm a citizen journalist. And the policeman said, yeah, and I'm the Pope. In other words, you're just full of it. Now, I want to know, where do we go next as citizen journalists? How do we get that immunity that the mainstream media enjoy and don't use for the benefit of mankind? How do we go about establishing for ourselves that important credibility and authorization that make us exempt from the police abusing us when we're doing no more than our constitutional right? I'd like each of you to address that. Where do we go? Where are we going to be in 5 years?
All right, I'll start, if you don't mind. One of the ways you do it is by stop calling it citizen journalism. It's journalism. And you do that by, you publish, any journalist is publishing in one form or another in media. So apply to the journalist unions or associations for the press cards, and then use that.
Okay. Andy.
Can I come in on that actually?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, Andy can probably follow on me much more eloquently, but since I've just dove in anyway. I mean, I think, honestly, the quote-unquote immunity of having the card in the first place. I mean, we talked about it with touching on the fact that there's this legislation coming into certain states in the United States about who can and cannot be a journalist. It's like the exemption of, oh, I've got this badge. Great. No. We want the truth. It's not about whether you have a badge or not. It's like, I should be able to look out my window, I feel. And if I see something happening that's good, bad, or otherwise, I should be able to put up a WordPress blog, go on my Twitter, and say, this is a thing that I've seen. And I don't think that these restrictions, I understand that, yes, the protections and things that it can offer are many, but these small presses that are often the places that you go for that, they're not protected in any specific way because they're suffering the same financial difficulties of any press right now. And everybody has the right to speak. That's the whole point, isn't it? And everybody has the right to a press, and that's the whole point. And so journalism itself and the way we speak about it, it's always a work in progress. The work itself is so much of the reward as well as the results of that work. So what we call it only makes a difference to my mind insofar as we're making a distinction between so-called sanctioned or mainstream media and everyone else. And it's just a semantic difference.
It's interesting that the whole calling it citizen journalism thing too, because we have that same photographer I was talking about earlier, the mainstream media photographer, is actually hosting that for like $150, of course, backpack journalist. So you can add any name you want to, and it's the same. It's journalism, period. As far as the press badges, I have serious issues with this because it's so unclear. In every state, it's different.
In some states, police departments require you to get a press badge through them. We don't have any such thing in New Mexico. We don't have a way of going and getting press credentials, right? So, but there's like a
we're losing you, Andy.
things you have to do while what we do, what I like to do a lot is to go in with, and we have press badges. We had to make them, and it was for security. Not only did they want your driver's license, they wanted a press credential photo ID. When we covered the Department of Justice's decision and the consent decree, and we were going to the press conferences for that, we made our own badges. You know, they're very professional. We have the First Amendment on it. We have it, you know, it's very nice. But what I like to do is to not even wear it. I like to keep it on me in case I get harassed or whatever. But for the most part, I refuse to wear it because I don't believe we need that stuff to flex that First Amendment. You guys talked last week on the banner that was put on the door in Santa Fe at the legislative sessions that said no bloggers allowed. Well, my fight here is they have no place to determine whether you're a website blogger or just a citizen that wants to come in and take notes. What if I wanted to just go in there and take photos and write down notes? Am I going to get pressed for my badge? So I don't believe in joining the unions or, trying to get the press cred. Screw that. You're a citizen. You have the right to report on what you see. You be the media. The hell with the rest. The hell with the unions, the ethics commissions, and all that, because it's all bullshit. If they actually cared about ethics, we wouldn't see Sean Hannity on the news. We wouldn't see Bill O'Reilly and some of the other clucks. The hell with that. You be the media. You go in to report. You see something, you say it the way you say it. Don't worry about, because what happens with all that is that it distracts people and it makes them not want to be the media because they think, oh, well, I need to be accredited. I need to get this press badge, and that's just too much trouble. I'll just catch it on the news. No, that's wrong. People need to go in and be the media, and not even necessarily the word media. Just go in and share your thoughts and your opinions on the way things are going down.
Here's the thing, we are the media, and unless we're prepared to be...
We're doing it right now.
Absolutely. And watch this, right? Here's the thing. Here's the thing that worries me more than anything else. The moment we start having to apply for press badges, the moment that becomes the criteria on which we're judged and on which we're accepted, don't forget, we still have to fall in line to whatever protocol that means and represents. And whoever it is that we work with, work for, the lines that they've got to follow is the lines that we've got to follow, or we actually have these badges taken from us, or we're not allowed to do our work because nobody will employ us because people will see us as loose cannons. So therefore, citizen journalism lives. It's right here. And the bottom line is there is a definitive mark between social media and citizen journalism. And citizen journalism is all about the guy in the street, the guy who walks past and sees the incident taking place. I mean, at the end of the day, there are so many, Michael Brown, you name them, right? There are so many different things where had it not been for an individual with his phone and his video cam taking a picture of what was actually taking place as he walked past the street, as somebody was being shot or killed or wrongly harassed, if it wasn't for what we saw with how Sandra Bland was being treated, Mario Woods, you name it, all the rest of them, we've actually got video footage of people walking past and catching these events, that's citizen journalism. Because had these people not taken the time out, the risk, and had the courage to take these videos and post them on YouTube or Facebook so that other people would have seen, we would have never got to the truth, we would have never got to the bottom, and we would have never found out what really happened in some of these most serious cases that the police would have loved to have covered up in the first place. And that is the freedom of citizen journalism. And that's why there has to be a definitive line, there has to be a difference, because the moment we have to start conforming to our journalistic badge, we've got to hand this thing in, somebody else is going to look at it, they're going to edit it because they're going to say that they can't put it out, or otherwise we're going to face legal action, and there it is. We never get the truth. All we get is part of it, or the part that they want us to see. And so therefore,
Kervin,
yes, mate.
Kervin,
I'm getting excited too.
I'm feeling the burn. I'm feeling the burn.
Are you feeling the burn?
I'm feeling the burn, the fire. Listen, I want to say something.
Coming in.
Denbaum may want to comment on this, Kervin. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Andy, I'd certainly like your input on this. Last week, we had a federal indictment against two people, or one, I can't remember, one or two, and they claimed the status of citizen journalist. Actually, in my view, they claim they are no more than paid gunslingers for the Republican right-wing fanatics who are against women's choice, meaning the right to abortion in the United States. They went in and claimed that they were reporting on abortions in Planned Parenthood clinics. They then fabricated some evidence and reported it. It became a huge scandal, calling for the defunding of Planned Parenthood, which helps so many poor women and men in the United States with anything from AIDS to pregnancy tests. 95% of what they do is not even abortion. So it was a big scandal. And now they've been indicted on felony. That too. Now they've been indicted on felony criminal charges, and they're claiming an exemption based on citizen journalism. What do you guys think of that? Besides chutzpah.
I think personally that they're screwed, because you can claim exemption over being a citizen journalist and basically saying, I'm a citizen journalist, I have no responsibility. I'm not one to follow all the ethics books like they want you to, being an accredited media, but there is a difference between lying and making up things that you need to be held accountable.
Absolutely. And
regardless of if you're a citizen or not, if you're going to put out the news, make sure it's right, because someone will find out. These guys did criminal. This is criminal. When you come up with videos and alter the videos to get somebody else in trouble for something, that's straight criminal. I mean, that case has me fired up now, just thinking about that.
And hang on a minute. In contrast to that, bearing in mind that sometimes that we get a version of events by the police or the station sergeant as to what took place on a particular incident, killing or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden a video materializes from the public that actually contradicts everything the police have just said, and that is citizen journalism, where you can now turn around and say, "Hey, Mr. Officer, you lied." That's also criminal.
Yeah, not making up stories.
Well, I'm going to chime in here, if I may. In the long tradition of reportage on news of the day, there's fact-based news, that's the news, and then you've got the editorial or opinion section, right? And that can be anything from a citizen opinion to the editorial opinion of the situation, predicated on the facts, i.e. the news. None of that encompasses simply making up the facts. And so, even on this program that's 2 hours every week, for something as simple as the special reports or David's News of the Week, we all do our very level best to do our due diligence, don't we? And to see to it that anything that we are saying is, as best we can establish, fact, and any commentary that we may make on that is the commentary from the perspective of the broadcasters on this program. And that's the distinction. At no point is it acceptable for somebody who's claiming to be a journalist to simply, well, I believe that the sky's purple, therefore that's a fact, and so the sky's purple, and that's my report. Sky. It's the same level of insanity.
Absolutely. And the unfortunate thing is, gentlemen, we've actually got so excited about the show. We've now come to that point of the show where we're running fast out of time. It's been It's been a very exciting, it's been a very challenging show. I still don't think that we've actually got to the end of it. There's a great possibility that we may still revisit this particular subject on a later date. But just before we do, Satish, what are your last thoughts as we go to close?
Well, there's quite a few.
Well, we haven't got time for a few, so let's just have a last thought.
Right. Well, there is an issue arising in the Lynette White case at the moment. And that is that the police who were acquitted at the time in 2011 are currently suing for compensation. And the judge, who's not even got a jury with him, has allowed the courts to say, you cannot say anything, you cannot comment on the Lynette White case at this moment in time until he reaches his judgment. This, to me, seems completely and utterly absurd, because how are you supposed to prejudice a judge who is sitting on his own without a jury? If he can be prejudiced, he shouldn't be on the bench in those circumstances.
Absolutely.
And where this becomes incredibly important is that the tariff, real murderer, was ludicrously lenient in this particular case, and it ends at the end of this month. At the end of next month, before he reaches his judgment. So technically, we're not allowed to report on that particular issue, even though it is one of national importance. I find that scandalous.
I absolutely agree with you. And the thing is, whatever happens next month, I do believe that we'll probably have to come back and revisit that case to find out what came out, what happened. But that's going to have to obviously be left to another time, because that's something that we can't talk about right now. And that's the ridiculousness of the restrictions that have been placed on the freedom of the press. And that's the difference between citizen journalism and social journalism. Because if I had that information, there'd be nobody on this planet stopping me from absolutely revealing it. If I had it access to me right now, I would be blurting it out all over this show, and I wouldn't give a damn who wanted to come after me. And that's me saying so. Andy, let's have your last thoughts.
It's interesting to listen to the comparison, because I'm with you, Kervin. I would, if I have information on something, there's no one that's going to stop me from saying it. But the last thing I would plug here is what we just discussed, for people to take the journalism or the events that you see into your own hands and share them through your eyes. There's a really good book. I suggest everybody read it. It's a short book called the Citizen Journalist Handbook, and it's written by Carlos Miller, the founder of Photography is Not a Crime, and it's very good. It shows step by step of what you need, how you step by step on how you should approach citizen journalism. And I just wanted to thank you guys again for the time that you've given us, because it's hard even to get any media out of New Mexico. We don't go past our borders, and without sharing our information between each other, we no one would know what's happening here. So I really appreciate your time again today, Kervin and David.
Well, listen, Andy, it's always a pleasure having you on the show, and what you bring to it is absolutely pure quality, and we're so happy to be able to bring the news of Albuquerque to life right here across the globe through Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio. And we wish you and your team at Burke Media all the blessings that could possibly, and all the protection and all the love that you need in order for you to be able to continue doing what you guys do. And we will stand in solidarity with you, supporting you every step of the way. So just know that
we really appreciate it, Kervin. One love.
Absolutely. We are family. You know that you have access to all of our platforms. Please continue feeling free to inform us, update us, and post where and at will, because we know that what you bring is authentic, genuine, and real. So feel free to use all the platforms that we've got open to share with everybody else. And I'd like to quickly run to Annette, if Annette is still there.
Yes.
Annette, can we just have your last thought?
It's very important that everyone get involved within reason, do film, photograph. We need people filming. We need
Somebody is taking the net.
Where our police officers are. We have a right to film. We do have a right to film. I have seen my local cop block gentleman. He was filming. You can bridge these connections with these police officers and the leaders, because they want to change ugly. But some things unfold. It has to get ugly. But we as a team need to work together and come together from both sides. Because too many people are dying. You touched on homelessness and hungry. I've been homeless. I have been hungry. I have reported in the General Assembly before. I have reported my leaders. That is part of digital forensics, which is standing up in courtrooms across the nation and around the world. So it's crucial that we be.
Thank you very much for that, Annette. Denmum, can you just wrap up where you are, my dear?
Absolutely, I can. And I just, first of all, I'd like to remind everyone that they should be following at Issues Today Show on Twitter. They should write down our email, issuestodayradio@gmail.com. I would very much like to see what our listenership has to say about how has citizen or independent journalism, or journalism in general, informed or inspired them. I would love to hear what they think that they can be doing, we can be doing to further spread the truth and create the change that we want to see in the world. And how does journalism or activism help in the development of community? Because as we know, here at Team Denmum, what we care about at the end of the day is the love wins principle. We care about community, we care about support, and believe that everyone has a role, that anyone can be involved with us at some form of grassroots level, or if they have an organization that's already established in some fashion. We want to hear about it. If you've got news you're not talking about, we want to hear about it because we want to boost it, if nothing else, from our Twitter, and we want to bring it to the show here if possible.
It's for the people who are wondering why we're in the streets and we're out.
Call every week and the news of the day that we're not already getting, because that's what we're talking about, is the essential nature of independent journalists and individuals spreading that news from place to place and person to person, so that real justice, real truth can win the day through love and unity. And that's all I've got to say on that.
And over to we're running out of time, I'm afraid. And David, your roundup for the.
Everyone's breaking up. What's happening to the connection?
I'm not sure. The signal is very weak at the moment, but please pray continue.
Want me to say something?
Yes, David, your signal is weak, but can you round up for us?
Yes, I'm going to wind up. I want to thank Andy and everybody else that teach all of our friends on that in Denmark, Kervin. I want to say something about the Internet. Not since Johannes Gutenberg in Mainz, Germany, came forward with the printing press, have the average persons in our world the opportunity to speak on matters that affect our very lives, the very and the keepers are, so to speak, the priesthood of mainstream journalism are scared to death. The mystery profession, the pluralism, and the pandocracy, and the big mouths, they have been confronted by an army of Davids with the Internet, and they say, oh, these citizen journalists don't meet the standards. They don't understand journalism. They don't understand the rules. They don't know how to parse and opine and blabbermouth. And we don't get their money either. But we do know something that they have forgotten. We know that in our spine and in our flesh and in the veins that pulsate with the blood of freedom-loving people, we are not going to be cowards. It is they who think that they control the media that give us our information by which we make decisions every single day. It is they who think they have that right. Well, people like Andy and you and me and everyone else associated with this project, we can tell them, your journalism is in a period of maximal self-confidence failure right now. And we of the Internet, we the warriors of citizen journalism, we are not laboratory specimens for you to come along as if there are carcasses upon the ocean. We are rising up like great oak trees, and with us shall be a canopy upon this world full of information, and information that is truth-based, and that will give us the courage to move forward and seek our freedom, live our lives, and not be oppressed by these people.
Thank you very much, David. And I just want to say a final thank you to each and every single one of you that joined us on the show today, to Annette, to Satish, to Andy, to Denmum, and obviously my co-host and shotgun rider, Dr. David Remay. Do please join us next Saturday where we start our launch of the Black History Month in America and Canada. And we're going to be looking to bring you something very special for next month. And at the beginning of next week's show, we will announce the future format for Issues Today, which is going to slightly change, but you're going to find very exciting indeed. But for now, it's myself, Kervin, Julien, World Jam Global Radio, and our Issues Today team. Thanking you very much for joining us. And it's time for us to say goodbye. We're out of here.
It's for the people who are wondering why we're in the streets and we're outraged. It's basically a rundown of what's happened, and this is recent. And it's if you run, you die. Hashtag Walter Scott. If you stay and get arrested, you die. Hashtag Freddie Gray. Lay down while handcuffed, you die. Hashtag Eric Harris. Hashtag Oscar Grant. If you fight back, you die. Hashtag Trayvon Martin. If you mind your business, you die. Hashtag John Crawford. Put your hands up, you die. Hashtag Mike Brown. Proclaim your innocence, you die. Hashtag Eric Garner. Getting married, you die. Hashtag Sean Bell. Pansagging, you die. Hashtag Irvin Edwards. Beg for your life, you die. Hashtag Thaddeus McCarroll. Hashtag Cedric Barty. Just alive at 12 years old outside playing, you die. Hashtag Tamir Rice. Be outside, you die. Hashtag Rekia Boyd. Be at home chilling, you die. Hashtag Katherine Johnston. Run into your home, you die. Hashtag Ramarley Graham. Injured asking for help, you die. Hashtag Jonathan Farrell. Be in a stairwell, you die. Hashtag Akai Gurley. Smoke a cigarette, you die. Hashtag Sandra Bland.